Ever since I was able to drive, got my driver's license, I was always into drag racing. And it kind of started out with cars. I was into the whole Mustang scene, the Fox body Mustang. Had turbos on those, went through nitrous, all the different power adders. And then when I bought my first Harley at 18, that's when it all just progressed. The chopper scene kind of started going out in the big wheel baggers, and I was never really into that because I'm, again, into the more stripped down, purpose-built bike, go faster, stop faster, just if it's not needed, it's not there. Started out kind of painting bikes on the side back in the early 2000s. Well, I've been into bikes since I was 18 years old. Well, really all my life, but really got into customizing and building the bikes in the mid 90s. Started kind of doing it as a job, custom painting in the early 2000s. That really kind of took off. And I was big into choppers, just more stripped down, more power, good brakes, just bare bones, the essentials. We actually officially opened in 2004, and the custom paint, bike building, service work, all that was kind of my main focus at the time. That's what we did, and I built several West Coast Chopper CFLs, and that's kind of where I got my start, I guess you would say. People really started noticing. Because I drag raced a lot, and I built that CFL, and it ran in 6 seconds in the eighth of a mile, like 690s. And there wasn't a lot of bikes, especially around here, running that kind of time. I rode it to the track, rode it home. Thing would run 690s at just over 100 miles an hour, an eighth of a mile. And that kind of got me some recognition because that whole scene, the chopper scene, was really hot then. And we were doing a lot of West Coast chopper builds, very clean, stripped down, bare bones. The economy crashed 2008, and we basically, because I am kind of diverse and do bike building, do the paint work, do some fabrication work, it kept me busy. I mean, I never really slowed down or anything. And, the chopper scene kind of started going out in the big wheel baggers, and I was never really into that because I'm, again, into the more stripped down, purpose-built bike, go faster, stop faster, just if it's not needed, it's not there. And I kind of still stuck to that, still did choppers, started, I bought my first FXR. Actually, the first Harley I ever started out on was an FXR. A guy that I was roommating with, when I was out of high school going to college, he had a Harley, and it was a 91 model FXR. And that was the first Harley that I'd ever ridden. And then shortly after that, I bought my own Sportster. But anyway, the FXRs were starting to get hot, and I had the FXR-T. I never really wanted to get into the big wheel bagger scene. I like the bikes to be lighter, more nimble. And so I bought the FXR-T, and that's kind of what I was riding. And then that scene starts taking off, and then it was just a natural transition, you know. And I started buying more and more FXRs, and really, once again, focusing on performance, good brakes, just bare bones. And I started drag racing the FXRs a little more, and that's kind of where I come to this one. I wanted to build like a newer style lowrider custom. You know, the FXR lowrider Harley had. I wanted like an updated version of that, like a 2022 version of what I think it would be, a special edition, Screaming Eagle or something like that. Carbon fiber is really hot, so that's where I went carbon fiber on everything, and big power, good brakes, stripped down, nothing but performance, but still look like a show bike that, once again, I can ride to the track, not trailer it, run in the sixes, ride the thing home. I used to drag race turbocharged Mustangs, and that's kind of how the name Boosted Brad come out. Back in the day, MySpace, all that stuff, you had to have a username, and mine was Boosted Brad. And but I'd always, ever since I was able to drive, got my driver's license, I was always into drag racing. And it kind of started out with cars. I was into the whole Mustang scene, the Fox body Mustang. Had turbos on those, went through nitrous, all the different power adders. And then when I bought my first Harley at 18, that's when it all just progressed. And so I wanted more power. I wanted it to be fast. And so it was just a natural progression from the cars to the bikes. And then it just kept growing. You know, every bike I built, I'd always want to take to the drag strip and see what kind of times it would run. And that's pretty much how it all come to terms, you know. The whole purpose for the bike was I still want to be able to ride it on the street, you know, and take it out and ride anywhere. I don't want it to be so much a drag bike that's its sole purpose that I can't ride it, you know. And that's always kind of been my goal, is have a street strip bike, something that's still dependable on the street, but I could take it to the track and, you know, beat most of the people there, you know. We come up with death metal racing probably, I'm just guessing, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And it started out with, I had a lot of the chopper guys wanting mid controls, and it just progressed from there, and we just kept adding to the parts catalog, and it grew and grew and grew, and people really liked the style. It was different. The risers, there wasn't much out there like that with the trellis design. I saw that a lot in cars, guns, and a lot of other industries, and I kind of brought that to it with the risers, and then it really hit big and kept growing, and the brand just kept growing and growing and growing. And we used to do all the service work and the bike builds, but now the parts line has grown so much and it's taken up so much time that that's pretty much our primary focus. I still do a few bike builds, but for the most part, it's just builds to showcase our parts. We have a few bike builds in process for customers, but we're basically focused on just the parts business now. And it's just really taken off. I mean, it's grown, and it requires all the time, because we are a small shop. You know, it's basically just me. My 16-year-old son helps do odd and ends around the shop. I come from a machining background. I worked for Caterpillar for 6 years. I was a CNC operator. I've run every kind of machine that we had in that factory at that time, from surface grinders to broaches, CNC lathes, CNC mills, just a lot of different machines. And that's kind of where the parts come into play, is I saw better ways to make things. I had a certain style that I wanted, more aggressive industrial look. And so I learned a lot all those years at Caterpillar, and I just brought it over into bikes. Back in the early 2000s, like I said, I was into the whole chopper scene, and I wanted to build my own bike. And Pete Finland was always a big inspiration to me. Pete Hot Dog Finland. He's a world-renowned painter. He paints a lot of bikes for West Coast choppers, and I wanted my CFL to have that style. And so I basically, on my Harley I had at that time, which was Softail Springer, I think. I basically just took the tins off of it and started painting them, and taught myself and started reading books, learning a lot of stuff online, and it progressed from there. I started getting friends that were wanting their bikes painted, and they liked what I was doing, and that's really what kicked the whole bike shop into action. It was 2004 when we actually opened up the shop, but it all stemmed from me custom painting bikes in my garage. That's how it all began. And then in 2004, in 2003, I'd stopped working for Caterpillar. I took a voluntary layoff because things were still slow in the economy, and I kind of saw that I was wanting to transition into the bike industry. And so I quit there. I started painting bikes full time, like I said, around early 2000s. And then 2004, I took the plunge and opened up a bike shop. And, you know, it wasn't all fun and games, and there was a lot of long hours, a lot of years of hard work, you know, working all day, night, and 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, then come back into work, you know, the next morning at 9 o'clock. I mean, a lot of years of doing that. It wasn't, you know, some people think that we're a new company and we just started the last few years due to the success of all the parts, but it actually started many years ago. So I wanted this bike. Once again, FXRs are really hot. Everybody's doing a tall bike, you know, purpose built, handling. I wanted to kind of do right the opposite of that. I wanted to do real low slung FXR, lowrider custom. I wanted that style of tank. I wanted an updated version of that bike with all the modern features of carbon fiber, you know, good brakes. I still wanted to keep the narrow front end. I didn't want to go with inverted like, you know, a lot of guys are doing, which I really like, but I wanted still to have that FXR feel, that lowrider custom. I've always loved that look of that bike. So we started out with a Rolling Thunder frame that we cleaned up, run a 143 S&S twin cam, carbon fiber fenders, carbon fiber side covers. Kyle Birch, a buddy of mine, Forever Rad, he wrapped the tank in real carbon fiber and the headlight, and he did that for me. And then I custom painted it all. We went with a Speed Dealer Customs bagger swing arm. I had a Pops Garage on it, which was the stock length, but being that I was looking to drag race this bike, I needed a little length in it to try to keep this bike on the ground. But I really wanted a bike that was really fast, but I wanted to be able to pull up at shows and people think that that's just a show bike. But then I can go to the track and run, you know, right off the trailer, this bike runs 670, it's not even dialed in. So we're shooting for low sixes. But that was really my ultimate goal all along, because my other bikes, they were in the sixes. I wanted this one to be fast, but at the same time, I wanted it to look good. I didn't want it just to be a drag bike or just a show bike. I wanted the two combined, but I still wanted to keep that FXR look of that lowrider custom, and that's what I think we accomplished, you know. So it started out as a 143 S&S twin cam. It has B3 heads. The motor, it makes a lot of power already, straight from S&S. You know, I think they rate the thing at like 165 horsepower. And it going in this light bike with all the carbon fiber. At this time, I really didn't need much more power till I get this thing dialed in, because that's plenty. So basically, I poured and polished the intake. We did some modifications to the carburetor. Originally, I had an R&R built transmission 5-speed. I had to change that because we needed to change the gear ratio, because first and second gear was just too much. It was just too violent off the line. So we went with a Jim's close ratio, which has a 282 first gear ratio, I believe it is, versus the stock 3.24 first gear ratio. So it raised the first gear ratio a whole lot more to try to tone the bike down off the starting line, and switch from a 24-2 front sprocket to a 27. And at the time we were building this was right in the middle of COVID. And of course, you couldn't get parts, couldn't find anybody that had a belt drive in stock. And Ultima Midwest had the Ultima 2-inch belt drive in it. We didn't know if it was going to handle that kind of power, but we took a chance on it, went with that anyway. And so far, I have a lot of passes on the drag strip, and it's still holding up. You know, it's got good clutches, stiffest springs that they make for that, and then we modified it for a mid-shift, mid-control. It's actually originally a bagger belt drive, and we shaved the front off where it had the shifter shaft boss on it. We shaved that off to make it look real clean, like it goes on the bike. And that's pretty much the drivetrain on this bike. So the exhaust, I started out with a Burns muffler. They're super light. They sound really good, but the biggest thing is it's stainless steel, and it's very, very light. And this motor, it makes so much power, so big, you really got to get the exhaust out quick. So we started out with 2-inch primary straight out of the head, and then it goes into 2 1/8 and then 2 1/4. So it's a very big exhaust, but it's a high pipe. I didn't want it scraping the ground or anything like that, and I just wanted it racy looking, and I wanted that straight line going across the bike. And that's just a custom exhaust I get asked about a lot, and it's one that I made here in-house. So again, keep going with the drag racing theme. I wanted to go carbon fiber on the wheels, so I went with the BSTs. I went with a 21-inch on the front because the Lowrider Customs, that was the thing that made those bikes stand out from the rest of the FXRs. They came out with a 21-inch front spoke wheel. And so I went with a 21 by 2.15 front wheel. And on the back, I needed as much meat as possible to hook the thing going down the track. But I didn't want to go with a crazy, big, gaudy, wide tire. So I went with a 17 by 6 1/4 rear wheel, and I'm running a 180 tire. I could have run a 200, but I need that tire as flat across as possible. And when you run the 200, it kind of domes over, where the 180 is a little bit more flat, so you get more contact pattern to the track. And so that's why we went with the 17 by 6 1/4 on the rear and the 21 on the front for that. And on the front end, I went with Pro 1 triple trees, Race Tech internals. Again, I wanted to keep a narrow glide front end because that's what a Lowrider Custom had on it, and I like a real sleek, slender looking bike. So I went with the Pro 1 trees, 39mm trees, and I did everything in raw machine finish. I wanted, once again, to have a real industrial look, you know, all business. DLC coated tubes, stock length. The risers are our shorty 2-inch risers because I wanted a real low drag bike. I didn't want tall risers. I didn't want club style. I wanted strictly drag race. Went with 2-inch risers, and then Thrash and Supply high bend bars with the Behringer hand controls. And I did the shorty levers, hydraulic clutch, everything just all strictly race and light as possible. The grips are our knurled grips. Once again, drag racing, a lot of guys will run knurled grips, so there's no slip, you know, it's just strictly race, wide open throttle, as quick as possible. And that's kind of the whole reasoning for the knurled grips. So originally this bike had a Pops Garage swing arm. It's very similar to the Speed Dealer Customs. It's just a stock length FXR swing arm. And the first time I took the bike to the track, it was impossible to come off the line in first. I had to come off every time in second gear. And so to add a little length, I actually went with the bagger swing arm that he offers for the late model touring bikes. It's about 1.5 inches longer than a stock FXR. The front width is the same pretty much, so it slid right up in there. I had to make a few minor adjustments with the spacers, but all in all, it pretty much went right in. I had Race Tech shocks on it with adjustable rebound, and I recently switched to the Fox that I had here for another bike that I'm building for myself. Just because once we went with the longer swing arm, and this one has the different positions where you can change the shock location to raise it up and down. I'm having to change the shock length, so Race Tech is building me custom shocks for it right now. But for the time being, I really like the Fox also, and I've run those on several bikes, and they work really good. So I'm running those until my new Race Techs come in. And the Race Tech shocks, those were actually 11-inch eye-to-eye. And it had my swing arm at a negative angle, which made it easier for the bike to wheelie coming off the line. So what we're doing is going with the longer shock to try to get the swing arm at a more positive angle versus the negative to try to keep the front end on the ground. And we're going to go with a 12.5-inch eye-to-eye measurement on the shocks. These Fox that are on it now, they're actually 13s, which they look really good and they fit the bike well. It's just they're in the last shock location, and I need them a little bit shorter to where for drag racing I can move the bottom bolt location to the front eyelet to get the swing arm at an even more positive angle. And then for shows, I can move that 12.5 up to the back hole, which will in turn bring the swing arm back level and bring the bike low, you know, so it'll be a real easy deal to change out from street to strip, or if I want to make adjustments at the track. That's another big benefit of this swing arm. I can raise and lower the angle of my swing arm and change how the bike takes off and try to keep it on the ground. We're kind of playing with the gear ratio. Once again, trying to get this thing down the track, get faster. Originally, it had Kraus 48 tooth rear sprocket, 24 front. Trying to tone it down, we originally switched to a 46 tooth rear sprocket, try to tone it down in first gear. That didn't work. So that's when we changed the transmission, changed the front sprocket to 27, which was really hard to find, but we changed that to 27, changed the transmission gearing, and we went back to the Kraus 48 tooth rear sprocket and an RK chain, X-ring chain, because I've had really good luck with those. Drag racing, never had any issues, braking, anything like that. But we just, since we changed that gear ratio, we went back to the 48 tooth Kraus because your sprocket diameter is bigger. And if we need to tone it down and go back down to a smaller rear sprocket, which is in fact a higher gear ratio to tone it down, well, you want to put the bigger one on first, because if you go back down to the smaller one, the 46, you know, your chain is too long and you can always take links out. But if I started with that 46 and then realized it was too high of a gear ratio and tried to go back to the 48, then I would basically have to buy another chain. And that was kind of the reason why I swapped back to the 46. So we're just kind of waiting for the weather to get right and be able to take the bike to the track with this whole new setup and kind of see what times we're going to get out of it now. So this thing, like I said, right off the trailer, it runs 670s at 108 miles an hour, which 108 mile an hour normally equates to like low sixes. But being that it was so slow getting off the line, having to come off in second, it was making up all the time going down the track. But once you get to the end of the track, you got to stop. And so we really like the look of these Lindell bow tie rotors. The black with the stainless steel outers really match the whole look of the bike. And so we went with Lindell rotors, and then our custom brake bracket for the rear that we actually just released. And the front brake brackets are also ours now that use the Brembo P34 calipers. They're real small. They stop great. It's still dual disc. But it's just a really, really small caliper, and it's nice and clean. It's not big and gaudy. doesn't stand out on the bike too much. You know, I wanted everything to kind of blend in. You know, I didn't want one piece to kind of overpower the other. And so I kept the same calipers all the way around. They're 2-pad, dual disc fronts, and then that 2-pad P34 on the rear. On the pegs, we use our bear trap pegs with the matching shifter and brake peg. We left all that raw to kind of just add hints and accents here and there throughout the bike. We're running our hydraulic slave cover for the clutch and our billet aluminum destroyer shifter, again, to match our risers, and left it all raw to tie in with everything. On the seat, I chose a custom Corbin gunfighter, or actually that's like a BMC wall. I'm not sure what Corbin calls it. They may call it a wall too. They're all kind of one and the same company. But I wanted that fast back look where when you're sitting in it, if you're leaned down on the drag strip, it all just kind of flows together. And that seat just kind of fit that whole look and what I was going for on this bike. It just, to me, really fit the whole drag racing vibe and look of this bike. So we're planning on taking the bike to the track, get quicker, get better ETs. So that's kind of what we're dialing in, trying to get the suspension right. There's really not many more changes I'm planning on, hopefully. Just dialing the whole setup in. I recently just realized I never had a kill switch on this thing, and so I've got everything just super clean, hidden, no wires. All the electronics are under the seat, hidden behind everything. I like a bike to look like it doesn't run, like there's no wiring, everything's super clean. I run all the brake lines, hydraulic clutch lines through the handlebars, so there's not much showing. And so, you know, you always think, or some people think that once you're done with the bike, you're done. It's perfect, whatever. It's never that way. There's always a change that you can make, or you see something that you could have done differently. That's with any bike. I don't care how perfect it is, or me personally when I do one. But for the most part, this one has been my favorite that I've ever done. I'm sure that'll change with the next one or whatever I do next. But I'm very, very satisfied with this one. Really, the only changes I'm making now is just for the track, strictly to make the bike faster, get the elapsed time down quicker. That's my primary goal. And aesthetically, I really don't want to change anything else. It's all strictly just to make the bike quicker. We have over 100 different parts. We have everything from pegs, shifter pegs, brake pegs, quick detach systems for FXRs and late model dynos. Risers are probably our best sellers. But we have shifters. We're working on brake arms for dynos and FXRs. But we have a lot of new products coming out in 2023. We have a new gauge bracket that'll allow you to raise and lower your gauges on our risers. It's not just a fixed mount that goes on top of the risers. We have a new gauge housing for the Road Kings. But a lot of new things coming out in 2023 that I think a lot of guys are going to find beneficial to have on their bikes. So you can contact us and check out our parts at www.deathmetalracing.com, boostedbrad.com. My YouTube channel is at boostedbrad. Instagram is at boostedbrad also. We're located at 226 South Haddon Drive in Ridgely, Tennessee, about 2 hours north of Memphis, very northwest corner of Tennessee.